The summer heat had turned cruel that day. In the middle of a small neighborhood street, the concrete shimmered under the burning sun, and the temperature had climbed past 105 degrees Fahrenheit. People rushed indoors. Windows were shut, fans spinning. But out there, in the middle of it all, something small and silent lay suffering. Clara, a school teacher heading home early from work, noticed something unusual near the corner of the sidewalk. At first glance, it looked like a crumpled bag, or maybe an old piece of cloth tossed on the ground. But as she passed by, something inside her made her stop. She turned her head, and what she saw stole her breath. It was a puppy, tiny, no bigger than a loaf of bread. His body was limp, his tongue hung from the side of his mouth, and thick foam bubbled from his lips. His eyes were barely open, glazed over with pain. His fur clung to his small frame, sticky with sweat and dust. The concrete beneath him was almost smoking hot. Clara dropped to her knees. "Oh, my God," she whispered, gently touching him. His skin was burning. She scooped him into her arms, feeling his heartbeat flutter like a broken drum. This puppy wasn't just dehydrated. He had been poisoned and left to die. Clara didn't think twice. She ran to her car with the puppy clutched against her chest, his tiny body burning in her arms. The AC blasted as she threw open the door and placed him gently on the passenger seat. He gave a soft, broken sound, barely a whimper, but it was enough to make her foot hit the gas like her life depended on it. She didn't know where the nearest animal hospital was, but her hands shook as she called out, "Hey, Google, find the closest emergency vet." Her phone guided her through turns, traffic, and red lights. She ran one, maybe two. She didn't care. The puppy's breathing was growing shallower with every passing second. As she drove, Clara kept talking to him. "Hold on, little one. You're not dying on me, okay? You're strong. Just hold on a little longer." His tiny eyes fluttered, as if hearing her voice through a fog. The foam from his mouth had slowed, but his body was limp, like a rag doll. 12 minutes later, Clara pulled into the vet's parking lot and rushed through the doors. "Please help. He's been poisoned. He's dying." The staff didn't waste a second. A vet tech ran over and grabbed the puppy from her arms. Another person wheeled in a crash cart. "Name?" one of them asked. "I don't know. I just found him." Inside the treatment room, a small group of professionals worked in silence and speed. Oxygen mask, 4 fluids, activated charcoal. One vet shook her head. "This is bad. He's extremely dehydrated in this foam. That's classic poison reaction. He's overheated too. His organs might be failing." Clara stood frozen just outside the glass. She couldn't hear much, but she saw the flurry of movement. Needles, tubes, cold towels, and the tiniest oxygen mask she'd ever seen. "Is he going to make it?" she asked the nurse softly. The nurse didn't answer. She simply said, "He's fighting, but it's hour by hour now." Clara sat in the waiting room, staring at the floor, her heart pounding louder than the ticking clock above the door. She had only known the puppy for less than 30 minutes, but it felt like her own child was back there. How could someone do this? How could someone poison a baby and leave it to die on boiling pavement? She didn't know it yet, but this little puppy had more fight in him than anyone expected, and what he would survive next would leave even the doctor speechless. Clara didn't move from her chair. The vet staff offered her coffee, water, even a blanket, but she just sat there, staring at the hallway where the puppy had vanished moments ago. Her hands trembled on her lap, still holding the towel he had been wrapped in. It smelled faintly of sweat, heat, and something sour, something like fear. Minutes felt like hours. Then an actual hour passed. Then 2. Every time someone walked by in scrubs, Clara stood up hopefully, but they kept moving. Until finally, the vet herself stepped out, gloves off, exhaustion on her face. "He's alive," the vet said gently. Clara gasped, her eyes filled with tears. "But he's not out of danger yet," the vet added quickly. "His temperature was 106 when he arrived. That's dangerously high. He was severely dehydrated and reacting to what we believe was a rodenticide, rat poison. If you hadn't brought him in when you did, he wouldn't have made it another 15 minutes. Clara swallowed hard. "Will he recover?" The vet nodded slowly. "We've stabilized him for now. We're giving him fluids and medications. He's resting, but his little body went through hell. It's going to take time." Clara whispered, "Can I see him?" The vet led her into the quiet recovery room. The puppy lay in a small cage, wrapped in warm blankets. His fur was still matted. A tiny 4-line was taped to his front leg. Monitors beeped softly above his head. His breathing had evened out, slower, calmer. But what broke Clara's heart the most was his eyes, half open, dull, but alive. "Barely. He's a fighter," the vet said. Clara crouched beside the cage. "Hi again," she whispered. "You made it. You're safe now." She didn't know if he could hear her, but the vet swore she saw his paw twitch. Just once. Later that evening, the staff allowed Clara to stay after visiting hours. No one argued. She sat beside the puppy for hours, humming softly and talking to him, telling him stories, letting him know he wasn't alone anymore. At around 2 a.m., something small but unforgettable happened. As she softly brushed his ear with her finger, the puppy let out a tiny sigh and his tail moved. A single, slow wag. It wasn't much, but for Clara, and for everyone who had nearly lost hope, it was a miracle. The morning sun poured into the clinic windows as Clara dozed off on the waiting room couch, still in her work clothes from the day before. Her sleep was shallow, her mind restless. She kept replaying the moment she found the puppy, how close he had come to dying right there on the sidewalk. A nurse gently tapped her shoulder. "Miss, the vet would like to speak with you." Clara stood instantly. "Is he okay?" "He's holding steady. But we've run some blood work, and the results are surprising." She followed the vet back to the treatment room where charts, scans, and blood panels were displayed on a small screen. The vet pointed to a few lines marked in red. "He didn't just ingest poison," she said. "He was also suffering from extreme heat stroke, acute dehydration, and organ stress. His kidneys were nearly failing." Clara stared at the screen, not fully understanding all the terms. But one thing was clear. This puppy had been through more than anyone imagined. "We estimate he was lying on that concrete for over 6 hours in direct sun," the vet continued. "That alone could kill a healthy adult dog. But for a puppy his size, he should have never made it." The vet paused, her voice lowering. "That's not all. We found bruising under his fur. It looks like he was kicked, maybe even thrown." Clara's heart dropped. Someone had hurt him, poisoned him, and then abandoned him in the sun to die. "He's not just lucky to be alive," the vet said. "He's a miracle." The puppy was stable but would need round-the-clock care. The clinic didn't have a long-term foster option at the moment, and Clara didn't hesitate for a second. "I'll take care of him," she said. "Whatever he needs." They gave her a list, medications, fluids, feeding instructions, and Clara took it all without blinking. She picked him up from his recovery cage, now cleaned and gently bandaged. His eyes opened just enough to look at her. There was no fear, no pain in them now, only trust. She carried him to her car like something sacred, cradled in fresh blankets. At home, she cleared space beside her bed and set up a cozy nest of cushions, towels, and a shallow dish of water. The puppy lay there quietly, his breathing soft, his belly rising and falling slowly. Clara looked down at him. "You need a name, don't you?" she whispered. He didn't move, but his ear twitched. "I'm calling you Lucky," because that's exactly what he was. The first few days at home weren't easy. Lucky could barely lift his head. Clara set an alarm every 2 hours to check his temperature, administer his medications, and gently drip water into his mouth. She kept notes of every tiny change. How many ounces he drank, how many seconds his eyes stayed open, how many tail wags he attempted. Every time he made even the smallest improvement, Clara would beam and whisper, "You're doing it, Lucky. You're really doing it." By the end of the first week, Lucky began trying to stand. His little legs shook like twigs in the wind, but he didn't give up. Clara placed rolled towels beside him for support, and each time he stumbled, she'd gently catch him, never letting him fall. People in Clara's neighborhood had started to hear about the story, how a schoolteacher rescued a dying puppy from the boiling sidewalk, how he'd beaten poison, heat stroke, and abuse. Her neighbors started stopping by to drop off treats, blankets, and toys. Children from her school made get-well cards with tiny paw prints drawn in crayon. The clinic even shared Lucky's story on social media. It went viral within days. Poisoned puppy survives 6 hours in heat. Vet calls a miracle. Local teacher saves dying pup. His fight will melt your heart. Clara received messages from all over. People offering donations, foster help, and prayers. She hadn't expected it. She didn't want fame, but she understood why it mattered. People needed hope. And Lucky had become a symbol of that hope. 2 weeks later, Lucky walked across the living room on his own for the first time. Clara cried. He wagged his tail the whole way. She bought him a tiny blue collar with a silver tag. Lucky rescued, loved, unbreakable. His fur started to shine again. His eyes were brighter. He barked, soft and raspy at first, but then loud and playful. The fear was gone from his body. In its place was joy, pure joy. One sunny afternoon, Clara took him to the park for the first time. She set him down in the grass, half expecting him to nap in the shade. But Lucky had other plans. He ran, actually ran, chasing butterflies, barking at squirrels, his little legs faster than anyone thought possible. Clara sat on the bench, watching the miracle unfold. From nearly lifeless on the sidewalk to this, it didn't feel real. But it was. A child passing by pointed and said, "That's Lucky. I saw him on the news." Clara smiled. Yes, that's him. And as the sun warmed the sky, Lucky ran free. No longer a victim, no longer a patient. Just a puppy with a second chance and a future as bright as his heart.